Hello everyone, my name is Quinn Noble, and this is my presentation on the Trail of Tears and Native American culture. Native American cultures involved in the Trail of Tears. There were 5 Native American tribes involved in the Trail of Tears. These 5 tribes were the Cherokee, Creek, Chickasaw, Choctaw, and Seminole. Each of these tribes are culturally unique in their own way. However, these 5 tribes are considered to be all a part of the Southeast Native American group and share similar characteristics and lived in similar climates. Cherokee. The Cherokee are North American natives who are of the Iroquoian lineage. The Iroquoian lineage constituted one of the largest politically integrated tribes when Europeans first began colonizing the Americas. Cherokee is derived from a Creek word, meaning people of different speech. Many Cherokee, however, prefer to be known as Kitawa or Tasalgi. They lived in the Appalachian Mountains, which is in present-day Georgia, East Tennessee, and western parts of North and South Carolina. Creek. The Creek are Native Americans of North America. They originally occupied a huge expanse of the flatlands of what is now Georgia and Alabama. There were 2 divisions among the Creek: the Upper Creeks, who were settlers of Northern Creek Territory, and the Hitachi of Alabama. They possessed similar traditions and cultures, although they spoke a slightly different dialect. Creek economy was based on the cultivation of corn, beans, and squash. Most of the farming was done by the women, while the men hunted and served as defense for their tribes' homes. Chickasaw. The Chickasaw Native Americans were a tribe of Muskegon linguistic stock. They originally lived in what is now northern Mississippi and Alabama. In earlier history, it is believed that the Chickasaw and Choctaw were of the same tribe. The Chickasaw were semi-nomadic people who patrolled an immense territory. They raided tribes in the far north. Much like an empire, they integrated conquered tribes into their culture. Choctaw. The Choctaw Native Americans were another tribe of the Muskegon linguistic stock. They lived in what is now southeastern Mississippi. They lived in thatched roof cabins of logs or barks plastered over with mud. Among the southeastern Native Americans, agriculturalists, the Choctaws were perhaps the most skillful farmers. They produced corn, beans, and pumpkins. They also utilized fishing and foraging for other food sources. Seminole. The Seminole Native Americans were a tribe originally of Creek origin and spoke a Muskegon language. In the last half of the 18th century, migrants from Creek towns of southern Georgia moved into northern Florida. Around 1775, these migrants became known as the Seminole. Seminole is a word derived from the Creek word Simonlee, meaning separatist or runaway. They lived in villages within the Everglades, as its difficult terrain provided them protection from outsiders. Forced relocation. The event that came to be known as the Trail of Tears was a forced removal and relocation of Southeast Native Americans. The event took place in the 1830s and was called the Indian Removal Act. Approximately 100,000 Native Americans were forced by the government to leave their homes. They were forced to travel over 5,045 miles west across 9 states to reach what was then called the Indian Territory. The Indian Territory, the end of the Trail of the Tears, is now known as the state of Oklahoma. Approximately 15,000 Native Americans lost their lives during the journey west. This atrocity was seeded by greed. In 1829, there was a gold rush that occurred on Cherokee land in Georgia. Vast amounts of wealth were at stake, and the government wanted to take it by any means. Thus, Congress passed the Indian Removal Act, which stripped the natives of their land and forced them to trek a horrible path westward. The Southeast Native Americans. The Southeast culture area was a humid and fertile agricultural region. The Native Americans who inhabited this region were expert farmers. They grew crops of maize, beans, squash, tobacco, and sunflower. They organized their lives around ceremonial and market villages called hamlets. The five southern Native American tribes, the Cherokee, the Chickasaw, Choctaw, Creek, and Seminole, were referred to as the civilized tribes. They were called this because of their hospitality and friendliness towards those outside of their world, and because they mostly lived in peace. These tribes spoke variants of the Muskogean language. Before the Trail of Tears even took place, these indigenous people had already suffered from disease and displacement. By the time the U.S. had won its independence from Great Britain in the 1830s, the Native Americans were removed from their land so that white settlers could move in. Race and racism. American ideals such as capitalism, colorblind society, states' rights and autonomy, private choices, and free markets are part of our understanding of our nation and our identity as Americans. Americans believe in merit-based rewards, or that our government and society is set up for everyone to have an equal chance for success. It is assumed that if someone does not succeed, it is ultimately their fault. Critical race theorists believe that adherence to these ideals as unquestionable, that they block the possibility of political, economic, and social redistributions that would disrupt systemic racism. Society denies there is a problem with the system because it reflects deeply held ideals or beliefs. This has been an issue not only in our time, but in the distant past as well. Racism fueled the cruelty that was the Trail of Tears and the destruction of the Native American society. We should never forget, as with any major tragedy, we should never forget the atrocity that was the Trail of Tears. We should never forget the tribes that were wrongfully removed from their homes. Racism falsely justified cruelty and genocide against the five tribes. We should remember these wise, brave, and industrious people and honor them. We must reflect on history so that it does not repeat itself. We must we must all unite as Americans and take on the future together. Even today, in modern times, it is true to say that the Native Americans that still exist are often overlooked. They are still in the background within the United States. It is a shame to know that they still face issues. They deserve a chance, just like anyone else.